Welcome back, and if you're just getting in the door, we have a recap with some of the local stories you may have missed. From the station putting local first, we are learning more about the children killed in the flash flooding up in Ruidoso. Their family has created a GoFundMe account to raise money to cover funerals and memorial services, as well as medical bills that the surviving parents are facing. If you would like to make a donation, we have a link to the GoFundMe up on our website, ktsm.com. The kids are described as, quote, kind, curious, and loved harder than anyone. We have reached out to the family of the man who was killed in those flash floods. It's understandable they have not responded. Ruidoso Downs Racetrack says All-American Futurity, Derby, and Oaks trials, those are all going to be moved to Albuquerque. It marks the second straight year that the All-American races have been moved from their home at Ruidoso Downs due to flooding, a major economic hit for the village. This is video showing the aftermath and destruction the flash flooding brought to Ruidoso Downs. Working crews can be seen with equipment just trying to swift through and remove debris from the racetrack. Local leaders have said that bringing racing back to Ruidoso Downs is important to get the economy back on track. In New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham was in Ruidoso today. The governor assuring everyone that resources and funds will soon be flowing into the village to help with the recovery efforts. The state received partial approval for a federal emergency declaration, which would provide federal personnel resources to support response and recovery efforts, and they're hopeful that there is more where that came from. And joining us once again this evening with the village of Ruidoso is Kerry Gladden. Kerry, thank you so much for your time and being here with us once again today. I wanted to talk about the governor visiting Ruidoso and just the message that the mayor as well as the village wanted to get across to her in terms of her assessing the damage and what she was able to see. What was the message to her?
The message to her was that, you know, I think it makes a big difference when you're here on the ground and you can actually see what is going on. And, you know, the governor has always been such a great champion for Lincoln County and Ruidoso. And I think that, you know, was very much reflected today during her visit. And, you know, she brought our congressional delegates with her. And so we had Melanie Gabe Basket and the lieutenant governor here, and I think it just shows us how much the state does care about helping us and getting us the help that we need. And you know, they're our champions. They're the ones that know the channels, and they work with Mayor Crawford to make sure that that gets done. And I think that we saw how that happens today.
Kerry, the governor saying today that she expects President Trump to sign that presidential declaration that's going to provide millions of dollars for resources and aid to help the village build once again. Can you explain how that process works, where the money goes, and really how to start this cleanup process, which unfortunately you guys are really all too familiar with?
Right, and basically the first thing that they're looking at is that there's $12 million that the village never got from the fires. And so, you know, we had to, prior to the floods, a lot of the mitigation work had come to a stop because we ran out of funds. And so the big initial push is to get that $12 million released and to us so that we can start work again on full recovery. And there's a whole lot of projects that we need to do. And then the presidential declaration, once that is all the way signed and through, hopefully, then, you know, that really opens up the purse strings and gives us the resources that we need to keep moving forward.
You mentioned that $12 million that the village was supposed to receive after last year's wildfires as well as flooding, and that never made it to Ruidoso. Is there an explanation as to why that money was never received?
No, there really isn't, and that's kind of what was frustrating about it. But it was great to see the governor come and get the current administration on the phone. She dialed up the Secretary of Homeland Security, and they had a conversation, and it was like, you know, that there's no reason that money should not have flowed to them already. And so, you know, it was great to see that cooperation between state and federal to push it down to the local level. So it was a good thing to hear that all that is going on.
We had also heard her mention levees that she wanted to be put in place there to kind of, just from the standpoint that this has become an area that is prone to flooding because of those burn scars from past wildfires. Is there any inclination at all that had this money been received that maybe that would have prevented Tuesday's flash flood from maybe not being as bad as it was?
You know, it's hard to say because you and I talked yesterday about how that on Tuesday was a historical flood. I mean, it crested at 20 feet. We've never seen that before, and that was 5 feet over what the previous historical high was. And that's a lot of water. And so, you have to think that, yes, if we had been able to continue the mitigation work that we had in place before we had to do a work stoppage at the beginning of the summer because there was no money left. And so you have to think, that, yeah, anything would help, but I don't know that if there's anything that could have been done to keep what happened on Tuesday from happening because of just how powerful and how big that water was.
Yeah, you had mentioned that 20 feet, that beat a record by more than 5 feet when it comes to that. What kind of happens next? You talk about $15 million, so $12 million was kind of in back pay, and this is coming up front, plus $3 million that's going to be hopefully up front as well. Is $15 million enough, though?
No, it isn't, but at least what it would do is it would allow us to get back to work on a lot of the projects that we had going, and then hopefully with the help that would come after the declaration and all of that, then we could really continue pushing forward.
Yeah. Kerry, thank you so much once again for taking the time with us here tonight, giving us some insight into what exactly happens next, and certainly all of our thoughts are with you and your community up there in Ruidoso.
Thank you, Andy. We appreciate it.
All right, Kerry Gladden with the village of Ruidoso. To the floods now across